Good morning, Andrew Marti here from SAP's S4HANA Center of Excellence, joining you today from beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. As always, we're focused on how SAP's S4HANA Cloud Public Edition addresses common critical challenges in the marketplace. And today, as always, I'm joined by my good friend, Feras Al-Basha. He and I are excited to join you as a part of our Grow with SAP initiative. This is maybe for us the 11th in our series of How to Grow Chats, maybe 12th. I'm losing count. Anyway, for us, good morning. Please say hello.
Good morning, everybody. Very excited to be joining you today. I'm a solution advisor here with SAP. Today, actually from New York City, very sunny, super weather. And unlike Andrew, I don't lose count as much as I spending time with him, but now unfortunately I also lost count.
All right, everyone, again, thank you for joining. As always, please check the chat and share with us where you're joining us from. I see that we have people joining us from Charleston. We have folks joining us from Chicago. Drop your location in the chat and also put your questions or comments in the chat, and we'll try to cover those live within today's session. If not, we'll do our best to get back to you after today's session is over. So for today's session, we're focusing on an important, really powerful need for our customer. That is SAP's Business Technology Platform, or BTP for short. It's a vital component to S4HANA. And for this conversation, we're joined by a very special guest. This is my good friend, Bob Sakalas. Bob, welcome. We're glad to have you here today. Please introduce yourself.
Hey, Andrew. Hey, Feras. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Doing well.
Yeah, I'm in sunny Atlanta, too, but I'm in the SAP office, and there's no windows in this office, so I'm jealous, Andrew. You got the much better view going on right now. My name's Bob Sakalas. I'm out of Dallas, Texas. I'm part of the SAP Center of Excellence for North America. And, BTP is kind of a really exciting topic because it kind of puts everything together for SAP. So it's not just ERP, it's all the other applications. So I'm really glad to join you, and I hope this will be a good session for everyone.
Me too, Bob. So, our audience understands S4HANA, right? We've talked about that with maybe 11 or 12 prior episodes. But today's episode is about an important complement to S4, kind of like how chocolate and peanut butter go together, or peanut butter and jelly, or maybe socks and dryer lint, right? These are things that go really well together. For us, like you and I, right? You and I go really well together during these sessions. Anyway, I could go on, but yeah, we're here to talk about these really important complements, S4HANA and BTP. So, Bob, help us understand this relationship between S4HANA and BTP.
Well, all the listeners need to know that you stole my analogy.
Sorry, Bob.
By the way, the best candy on earth as far as I'm concerned. But, so the way it goes together, if you think about it, ERP used to be this big monolithic application. 10, 20 years ago, we were installing ECC. It tried to do a lot. It tried to do a heck of a lot, right? And customers took ECC and they started modifying it a little bit and adding additional changes to it. And it kind of grew into a beast, this big monolith, trying to accomplish everything that a large company wanted to do. But as the world has evolved, this idea of modularity and how do you innovate at the edge and go fast while you keep specific functionality kind of smaller and more upgradable, I guess, evolving quickly. Modularity is really the future. It's how the things are going to work well together. So if you think about S4, which is our most modern ERP, it does a certain amount of functionality, but on the outside of that, there's going to be unique requirements that a customer may not find within S4. I think most customers find that S4 gets 80, 85, 90% of the functionality that they need, but there's always that extra 10%. They've got to integrate to a very unique landscape. They may have differentiating capabilities that they want to include within the ERP that's not part of standard ERP. And so that extra 10%, how you get a great fit, we've designed BTP to help you complete that picture so that it's perfect for your company.
So Bob, on that note, you talked about modularity, you talked about ERP S4 and other things. So can you help us understand how BTP, is that connective glue? When you think about Grow, S4, you think about things like Concur for Expense, among others.
Well, first of all, to be very clear, we actually wrote BTP for ourselves. SAP created BTP because, we were, the number one ERP in the world, but we also had SuccessFactors, which is in the top two. We also had Ariba. We also had all these other applications. So we had to get everything to work well together. And so we wanted to create a platform so that our own developers would become better at making it all work well together. That's how you maximize the value of everything that you have, whether you're a customer or whether you're SAP. And so BTP is really, roughly 100 technology services that all the developers in SAP use to create new applications, to make applications work together, to deliver better value for our customers. Now, there might have been a great moment, I don't know how much caffeine Hasso had at the time, but they got the idea that why don't we sell BTP, our own internal platform, to our customers? So that way, if we're developing in a modular way, and our customers start using BTP to develop in a modular way, suddenly we can go into the future together and have a much greater pace of innovation. So BTP itself is that connective glue, but it's a lot more, and it's what we write all our applications on, and our customers are now adopting it. It's amazing, but if you look at just the top 100 corporations worldwide, 99 of them, by the way, are SAP customers, but 70% of them are now using BTP to help glue these things together and get greater value.
So Bob, I didn't know that, right? That's a great number. 70 of these companies are using BTP as their connective glue. So continuing with this, what are other things that our audience might not know about BTP?
Well, I think it's really easy to kind of lose sight of the forest for the trees. There's a lot of trees in the land of, if you look at a complex IT landscape, you've got integration, you've got automation, you've got how am I going to leverage Gen AI, how am I going to become more data-driven? How am I going to make that data available not only to the top executives, but to everybody that's working within a business process? So there's lots of trees that, each one of those things, you can wind up having a week-long workshop on any one of those. But the number one reason that BTP really exists is to help you future-proof your business, to be able to get to where we're going to be in 2030, which will be this modular, more real-time, data fabric kind of driven place. And so, future-proofing, by using BTP instead of creating your own little tech stacks to solve individual problems is really, really a big deal.
So Bob, when you say future-proofing, and we look at especially the past 20, 30 years, there's significant disruptions happening in the world, right? Macroeconomic challenges, geopolitical challenges, and natural disasters. So can you help us understand, how does BTP help, or actually how did it help in the most recent black swans, like, for example, COVID?
Well, a lot of ways. An example that comes to mind is Parkland Hospital. Are you guys familiar with Parkland? You know what Parkland is? You know what they're famous for?
I do.
Yeah, JFK, after JFK got shot in Dealey Plaza, got taken to Parkland. But Parkland is actually the busiest ER in North America, or at least they were in 2019. So you can imagine how hard COVID hit them in 2020. All of a sudden, they had literally tens of thousands of patients dialing in to try to get their symptoms checked to see if they have COVID. Everybody was in a minor panic. At the hospital themselves, their basic processes just didn't go fast enough for this incredible world. They didn't know what ICU beds are going to be available. They didn't know where all the ventilators were. They didn't know nurses that are going to be on staff. They didn't know what doctors are going to be on staff. They didn't have mission control to deal with a disaster like COVID, especially when it first hit. And so they basically partnered with SAP, and they used BTP to go fast. And so they took inventory processes that used to be just paper-based and immediately made them all technology-based. They then, of course, created, what I've been talking about, this whole idea of mission control, where they had a spot where they could see how they were performing, what were the critical needs, what was going to happen next. They actually created a chatbot symptom checker for smartphones. So now customers could call in, by the way, multiple language support, and they could check their symptoms before they actually had to talk to a human being because the human beings were so overwhelmed. So, it's a black swan that was of gargantuan proportions when you're looking at Parkland Hospital. And right now I've seen the CIO speak. He's basically, BTP saved lives. Now you might think this took months to get done. Most of these features rolled out in 3 weeks.
Wow, that's a powerful story that I think we can all relate to, especially as it impacts people's livelihood. But you threw a lot out there. So just to recap, this was an incredible example of how SAP and BTP helped respond to a real-world disaster, very fast manner, and using all the different 100 services you mentioned, from the chatbot, from managing the inventory, talking to the processes, and of course, making an impact fast. Can you give us other comprehensive examples?
So you snuck the word comprehensive in there.
Yeah, well, I thought you pay attention, so thank you for acknowledging.
One of the best stories that I know, are you guys familiar with Vestas? Do you know who Vestas is? Yeah, so Vestas builds more of those electrical generating windmills than anybody else on Earth. They also service more of them than anyone else on Earth. So they basically had both sides of the business. They're building them and they're servicing them. I happen to see, by the way, a lot of these windmills because my daughter, for the last 4 years, has been going to college at Texas Tech in Lubbock. So when you drive from Dallas to Lubbock, there are just miles and miles and miles of these windmills. They're everywhere. But yeah, so their problem was, their CEO was just not a happy guy. Every time he went to the IT department, he'd say, hey, IT, I need this new functionality for the business. And IT would say, sure, sir, no problem. We can get that done in 2 to 3 years. And he was pulling his hair out. He's like, I need this functionality much more quickly. Their core problem really was that construction was 100% paper-based. And so if the wind blew the door open to the trailer, half the project might land on the floor. And there was lots of expensive mistakes that happened. These cranes, these windmills are huge. So the cranes that have to build them are even larger. So if you move one of these monster cranes at a wrong spot, it's a $12,000 mistake. And that's just one mistake. There's lots and lots of mistakes that happen. Construction's a messy business. And so they on the services side, all the services guys were out there trying, and by the way, full disclosure, I'm from Chicago, so I'll say the word guys way too often, but it's all inclusive if you're from Chicago. But all the services techs, they would go out there, and as you can imagine, these windmills are not built in the center of town. They're out in Timbuktu. And so the guy's out there, he's trying to fix this windmill, he's missing a part. They were using these old Panasonic Toughbook, kind of green screen Panasonic Toughbooks, but they weren't on the network. They weren't connected because they're out in Timbuktu. So this guy would have to jump in his minivan, go driving back to town, order the part, go back out to another windmill, find out he doesn't have that part, drive back to town, do it again. It's kind of like Andrew going to Home Depot 4 times in a row on a weekend when he's trying to do something in his garage. It's a never-ending process of going back and forth. So they jumped on an airplane. They went to Cupertino. They went to Apple's Space Dish, which I've never been there. So have you guys been there? It looks awesome.
Haven't been invited yet.
Yeah, so they did design thinking with their field personnel. Now, what Vestas, by the way, is out of Denmark. So they flew back to Denmark. They took pre-built content from SAP. So they didn't write stuff from scratch. They basically assembled pre-built content from SAP within BTP. And within 6 months, construction went from all this paper to completely iOS-based in 6 months. On the services side, they compressed 50 of these green screen legacy apps on these Panasonic Toughbooks into 6 consumer-grade apps, once again for iPhone and Android. And they don't even train their folks. They just give them the phone. And they actually have KPIs built in through BTP that they can track. How are people using it? What are they clicking on? Do they need training? And of course, they modify it whenever the app's not obvious enough. But they've gotten to the point now where they can give a brand new tech the phone and they're productive right away. And so the fast time to value, reduced risk because they used blueprints that existed from SAP. They got it all done. And I mean, the ROI was less than 6 months. It was an amazing story. But it kind of encompasses so much of what BTP can do for you. They integrated both SAP and non-SAP data. They included automation. They included mobility services. They did a better user interface. They did all these things to accomplish this huge thing. And the last piece that I got to tell you, and I know I'm going a little bit over on what I've intended to say, but they abstracted that legacy core system. So what happened next at Vestas is now they could take on an S4 project. Now they could take on the next level of field automation. They could take on warehouse, and they're doing a lot of stuff with warehouse. They actually they're extending the business network to their suppliers because it turns out that these windmills have 50% of the content comes from their suppliers pre-built. So they're assembling as opposed to building stuff from scratch. So yeah, the Vestas story is a really comprehensive story of how BTP can revolutionize a company, even one that had underinvested in their technology in the back end.
Now, Bob, love that story, right? And yeah, comprehensive is a great word. I also love that point there, right? Because Vesta was able to clear all these other things off of their table, it actually puts them in a position to innovate more. So that's really exciting. And by the way, you're in Atlanta, so we all use y'all down here, know you guys, okay? So just, we'll let you know that going forward.
I'm committing right now to put at least one more y'all in there before I'm done.
Good. Now, we have to work on Feras, right? It's harder for these Canadians.
I'm not entering that ballgame.
All right. So, Bob, these are things that we didn't know about BTP. What else do we know about BTP? What else do you know about BTP? Can you share with y'all?
Well, all y'all realize, woo, I did all y'all. No, all y'all realize that there's just a lot of technology that's being used at companies. And the one thing that BTP does is it really simplifies the complexity of your overall landscape. And Andrew, I know I can see that look on your face right now. You're wondering, how does it do that? Well, what happens in companies a lot is that you've got a problem and everybody gets in a room, they try to solve that one problem. And companies tend to assemble a unique tech stack of stuff to try to solve the problem. So, let's say they're trying to optimize pricing. So they're going to create this new engine that helps them optimize and test pricing and have A/B testing and all that kind of stuff. So they take solutions from maybe 12 different vendors, they assemble it themselves to try to solve this problem. Unfortunately, the next conference room over is talking about another problem. They want to optimize procurement, perhaps. And so in that conference room, they assembled 12 different technologies to try to solve that problem. And this happens over and over and over, and they get no economies of scale whatsoever by doing it this way. BTP, what we're striving for in BTP is to solve hardcore business problems. We're not solving how you manage containers. That's an infrastructure, Google, Azure, AWS kind of problem. We're trying to solve how your business processes work. And anything that's a business process that's not perfectly optimized, that is what SAP is using BTP for. And the difference, of course, is that you can use all these services. Remember, we invented it for ourselves. So everything is comprehensive, a good way to put it, right? For us, his favorite word right now. And so it's a comprehensive set of services that can solve not only that procurement problem or the optimize the cost problem, but it can also solve your data-driven problem. And so by doing it that way, you solve the complexity, because the truth is, I picked on Home Depot because you're in Atlanta, but Home Depot's not trying to be the unique IT department that competes to get the IT Hall of Fame. No, they're trying to beat Lowe's and other home improvement places. That's what they're trying to do. And so this lets them focus on the primary mission.
Yeah, so it simplifies, to your point, Bob, but also back to your earlier point, right? You're future-proofing. So as you need to add additional ideas and additional capabilities, it can those needs can just simply be plugged into this BTP framework to future-proof for future innovations.
Yeah, and the cool thing I was talking about, I'm going to rewind for a second. Well, we talked about, you've got S4 and you've got the 10% that's not covered, and BTP covers those things to give you kind of a custom fit. Here's the other cool part that we need to talk about. BTP's got a lot of functionality that you may want in the future that you're not ready to adopt today. So for example, let's say you want your employees to be able to take their phone and say, hey, how many days of vacation do I have left? Hey, Jewel, how many days of vacation do I have left? Guess what? That capability is already going to be in BTP. So when you're ready to adopt it, when you're ready to add it, other companies will have already done it. You're going to have an easy path with blueprints, with everything else, to be able to add that functionality.
I'm loving the excitement, the passion, but, a lot of stuff being thrown. So just to your point, Bob, to recap, we started with, as usual, our Grow and S4 where business processes run. And then we talked about how BTP helps solve business problems. And we gave very comprehensive 2 examples. One was at the Parkland Hospital, a new emergency room cockpit. And then we went to the Vista example in the construction industry, very old technology, very modern user experience, almost over a few months, right? Transforming the business. So when we look at it from that perspective, solving business problems, what other capabilities have we not discussed and are relevant for BTP?
We've hit a few highlights, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention integration because it's such a hairball of a problem for everybody. How do you make disparate systems work well together? Everybody fights this. Are you guys familiar with Murphy Oil? Do you know who they are?
Yes.
Yeah, exploration and production company. They don't do refining. They basically drill for oil. They ship it. Somebody else refines it, right? So they had a problem. They roughly 15 significant systems give them a view of the business. And they had this remote operations center that basically tried to manage the tasks to make sure the right people were dispatched at the right spot to keep production up. But as you can imagine, when you're spread out all over the world, that turns into 15 million tasks a year. So they're busy. And because the places that they had to check were 15 different systems. So this remote operations center was spending all its time trying to figure out what's happening on this system, what's happening on that system, what's happening on this system, trying to figure out what's the right priority. It was a crazy mess. And so they decided to use BTP to integrate both, a lot of their stuff is SAP, but things like pressure gauges and things like that. There's a lot of stuff that's very, operational technology. And so they integrated using BTP, these 15 different systems. They recovered 1 out of 4 days. That's how much more time the operations center got. They also got better visibility so they could prioritize things better. And Rajesh, who's the leader of this over at Murphy, he basically put it this way. We got an amazing business result. We got more than 20% more throughput through just integration alone. So to me, integration is just a topic that everybody needs to address. I've never found a company that says, my systems work so well together that that's not a problem for us.
Yeah, that's really powerful, Bob, right? 20% more throughput for Murphy. With Vesta, they were able to bring 50 apps to 6. So just another example of the simplification that BTP is really enabling.
And rationalization, right? I mean, it costs you real money to maintain 50 apps. If you can get 50 apps down to 6 apps, the results on how fleet of foot your IT department gets is amazing.
So, Bob, you're on a roll, right? Give us more stories here that we don't know about BTP.
Oh, man, I'm starting to feel pressure. More stories. They want more stories. Well, one that comes to mind just because I landed in Atlanta last night. And by the way, this is a little unsponsored commercial, but Father's Day is coming up, so I want to put this idea in people's heads. So when you land in Atlanta, you come in often over the top of the Porsche Experience Center. It's right on the outskirts of the Atlanta airport. So if you're traveling to Atlanta, this is available to you. But so a couple of years ago, my kids, which are, they're college age, they gave me a Father's Day gift. I got a day at the Experience Center. And so for a day, I tried to be my own version of Mario Andretti, and it was amazing. It's like grown man Six Flags. So highly, Feras, you're Feras, but I'm going to quote Ferris Bueller here. If you've got the means, I highly recommend it. But the reason I bring up Porsche, by the way, is that Porsche had an interesting problem. They had this corporate data. They wanted to make the corporate data available to all their users. That was, highly, trusted, highly regulated, serious system of record kind of stuff. But if you think about their user base has a lot of dealerships that are not Porsche owned. So everybody needed their own playground. They wanted to get corporate data that they had rights to see, but at the same time they wanted to be able to add additional data. So for example, the Porsche dealerships of Atlanta, they want to add their own data to see how it meshes with that corporate data. And so the data fabric that they needed to create, now the basis of that became, SAP DataSphere, which is part of BTP. It enabled high quality data from the corporation to be shared with its partners. And by the way, this also worked internally. So if the marketing department wanted to add their own data, if the finance department wanted to add their own data, everybody got a playground. But the playground, it wasn't like a regular playground where you lose control of the data because you're copying and transferring. In this case, the high quality stuff stayed high quality. You got your own playground to do your own analysis. It was an amazing, thing. And BTP is really at the forefront. I mean, it's one of the absolute leaders out there right now in creating this kind of like federated cache data that retains its context. If you've not had a meeting with your account team over DataSphere, I highly recommend, my Ferris Bueller line, but I highly recommend having a meeting around DataSphere. It is truly revolutionary. It is really helping us become more data-driven.
Awesome. So, Bob, going back to our S4 audience out there, right? Many of them are likely thinking about clean core and how critical it is with S4 to keep that core clean. What's BTP's role in a clean core?
Well, I talked about simplifying the complexity, but where I started was that you have to adopt this modular architecture. So BTP, one of its primary purposes is to give you a spot to do these customizations that you used to do in your monolithic app in the past. It was really easy to paint yourself into a corner where every time you wanted to make a change, you would spend months, just months, retesting things. It was a mess. We had some customers, very large customers that were really struggling with what's the upgrade cycle? How long am I going to be down? Levi's, by the way, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Levi's story, but they had a huge, long upgrade. And by creating this modular world where they were able to take a lot of the custom functionality that they needed and push it out to BTP, they were able to cut down those upgrades. They were able to make it, I was going to say agile. Let's use agile, even though agile means something in the industry. So I'm not using it in the classic sense, but you know what I mean. Nimble. I'll go with nimble.
There we go.
Yeah, but they suddenly were able to get their core systems to be nimble again, where because it helped you become nimble and modular. You could now use smart testing software, like for example from our partner Tricentis, where now you could get a look at what do I need to retest, what do I not need to retest, how can I move faster. So the idea of clean core is just an absolute foundational level thing at BTP. Put these customizations in BTP so that way you can run ERP in the cloud.
I mean, this is a topic very close to our hearts, Andrew, as you know, with Grow. And, on the clean core, I do want to add one other story, which is from PwC that you may know, right? One of the big four firms, long-standing SAP customer. And when they looked at their transformation, they had a clear strategy that they want a true SaaS solution. That's how we want to operate. And as a part of that, there were very critical decisions. And the way they approached it is, hey, if it's not my secret sauce, if it's not something that I cannot do in standard, it's a change management. It's a change management topic. Fast forward today, they're able to run their business truly on Grow using BTP for areas of secret sauce, right, where it matters. But the value they are getting out of this is, of course, being much more nimble, like you mentioned, much faster, adding new member firms and unlocking new business models, right? That simply these capabilities would not have been able to be supported should you invest the time in trying to reinvent the wheel and copying and pasting what you've done for years.
No, love that story for us. Bob, you mentioned Levi's, right? It reminded me of Levi's Stadium, home of the San Francisco 49ers. You have another great story about the 49ers, don't you?
Other than the fact that I cheer for Brock Purdy because Mr. Irrelevance trying to win the Super Bowl? Come on, that's awesome. It's like the modern day Rudy. Come on. Anyway, and I'm not even a big 49ers fan. I'm just cheering for Brock. But no, you're absolutely right. We did the 49ers story is a really interesting story because lots of companies realize that they need to become more real time. When you become real time, you can react to your customers faster. When you become real time, you can make decisions quicker. All these things are just amazing. But making steps in that direction is sometimes difficult. The 49ers, they not only realized it, they did something about it. They took BTP and they integrated all those stadium systems. Everything from the parking lots to the concession stands to where you buy your jersey to the food service to the restrooms. All those things became integrated, and they, I've used the word mission control before, but yeah, they absolutely created mission control. It's on the 45-yard line in a box, and their executives can see how the fan experience is going, and are my fans happy or not happy? If they find out the hot dogs are cold on the west side, they can hustle people over there to make a real-time change to make sure that the fan experience for those 70,000 people only show up for about 4 hours. Not counting the parking lot tailgaters, but that's a different topic. But the whole point is becoming a real-time business changed everything for the 49ers. And I actually think that is an important step that almost every SAP customer needs to make soon. Now, some interesting underlying technology is just getting a lot better fast. And that's really our advanced enterprise mesh capability. It's kind of like setting up, it's PubSub, but it's very flexible PubSub, which is not this, if you're already using Kafka, you realize how difficult that is because you have to be able to program all the messages and what am I going to receive in what application. Our advanced enterprise mesh gives you flexibility plus that capability. So now you basically are creating this big cell phone network where one application just can put a message out on that cell phone network, another application can pick it up, and things can be developed in, minutes. This is not even hours. This is minutes. It's an amazing way to make the right first steps toward becoming more real time.
No, Bob, love that story and very timely, right? Today is, you mentioned the NFL. Today is the NFL draft. We'll have a new Mr. Irrelevant, I guess, drafted today. By the way, you and Feras would be my first and second round picks, respectively, if I were drafting today.
I presume Bob would be first, right?
We'll leave the mystery out there for us. But anyway, for S4 customers, BTP should be their top round draft pick.
By the way, I'm time to stump Andrew. Andrew, when was the first NFL draft held? What year?
Oh boy, let's see. I'll guess Joe Namath era 68, 69.
Okay, Feras, what do you think?
I have no clue.
1936.
36, wow.
Mind-boggling how long ago we were drafting. I'm sure it wasn't on ESPN at the time, though, but there you go. But you bring up football. I want to give you a football story because it just came to mind. But a little over a year ago, do you guys know Andy Malumba? I don't know if you came across him.
No, I don't know. Yeah,
so Andy's an SAPer. He actually worked on our team. And Andy actually played in the NFL for the Green Bay Packers. And so he obviously got a lot of chances to talk about BTP. And he made an amazing observation in one meeting that I've never forgotten. Andy said, it's not the team with the best game plan at the beginning of the year that winds up winning the Super Bowl. If you think about it, there's game-to-game adjustments. You review not only your own film, but you review the film of your upcoming opponents. And then during the game, you're adjusting from series to series. I think we've all seen that video when who threw the iPad or the Microsoft Surface tablet on the ground in disgust. It was Tom Brady. Tom Brady did it, right? And but the whole point is that they're trying to adjust from series to series. And in truth, Andy said they adjust from play to play. They're doing adjustments the entire way. And so his point was, it's almost an infinite game in the NFL, but we get to see the results every single week where they're always adjusting, they're always changing, and the team that changes the best winds up winning the Super Bowl. If you think about it, that's what we're doing in business too. every single week our competitors are doing something different and we have to adjust. And so we have to set up a real-time system that's data-driven, that's modular, that'll help us adapt quickly.
And you can only do that with BTP and S4HANA, right? Again, a great combination like, I don't know, like Jerry Rice and Joe Montana, like, I don't know, like Brett Favre and his interceptions, right? They just go together.
I'm a basketball guy. Stockton to Malone. There you go.
Okay.
Well, my favorite is Jordan and Pippen. But hey, speaking about adjustment, real-time business, all of these, important topics, there's an elephant in the room, and that's generative AI. So Bob, I'm curious, how does this discussion relate to generative AI?
Well, okay, stump Bob time. No. Gen AI has amazing potential, absolutely amazing. But at the same time, it's not great for every single situation. Gen AI, in essence, predicts the next word. So, you guys play along with me right now. So if I say once upon a
time,
right? That's how Gen AI works. It's predicting the next word. But if I do this exact same example again, once upon a time,
a princess.
No, my point is, the next word's not as obvious. Statistically, by the way, Andrew, the next word is was.
Okay.
No, there was. Whatever. Once upon a time, there was. The whole point is that it's always predicting the next word, which is exactly why it's not good at jokes. Do you know why Gen AI is not good at jokes?
Why is that?
Because you have to know the end before you write the beginning. That is not how it works. It's always predicting the next word, right? So it's really great at content generation. If I ask it to write a limerick about your event here, it would write a really cool limerick. If I asked it to create a new photo, it would pick the next pixels. But it can't answer business questions all that well. Why? Because business questions require current data. And most, AI engines, it takes an amazing amount of horsepower and carbon emissions to generate the next model, no doubt about it. And that model, is usually generated a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And now you're feeding it information into that model. And that model is responding. Basically, it has no short-term memory at all. It doesn't know what happened the last 2 years. It just knows great language and knows it by picking the next word, right? So when you start looking at the solutions from SAP, so whether we're talking about Joule, which is going to have amazing AI underneath the sheets there, or if you're talking about the embedded applications that we're creating for finance or procurement or for your human resources or for customer experience, all these things require understanding the business process, understanding a customer's unique data, keeping that data private. I haven't met one of my customers yet that says, oh, I just want to let my data get out to the rest of the world. No, nobody does, right? So you have to be able to combine this stuff to answer a lot of things. But there's stuff that I don't want to discount what Gen AI can do. There is some amazing stuff that Gen AI can do in business, but it can't do everything up by itself.
So love that, right? Again, another dynamic duo, Bob, S4 and Gen AI, which is really only enabled through BTP. So let's do this. I want to talk a little bit more about Gen AI, but let's take a look and see if we have any questions. So again, drop your questions into the chat. Here's one that we received before the event live, Bob. What about automation? Does BTP help with automation?
The answer is absolutely yes. I'm sure some of our audience were at probably the 2017 or 2018 Sapphire, where Hasso was on stage talking about how the future is a far more automated ERP. I think it's, automation's been around a while for everyone. And, there's leaders out there like UiPath and other companies, but a lot of that stuff was kind of like, oh, I'm going to scrape this screen over here and I'm going to paste it over there. It was like small opportunities of repetitive work. SAP's version is completely different. We purchased Signavio for a reason. We want to not only look at your business processes, we want to model your business processes to be much better. We have workflow as part of BTP. We have automation as part of BTP, but what we're really looking at is how do we do this across your entire process? So if we're working on order to cash, what's your process from the beginning to the end of order to cash? And what would make sense? What needs to be programmed? What needs to be screen scraped? Not that we do it that way. We do it through API so it doesn't break later, but that's a different issue. But the whole point is we're looking at enterprise automation. We're also including our newest purchase, which I don't know if you guys have seen LeanIX, but LeanIX basically lets you see the inventory of all the applications you have, rationalize those applications, understand how the data is flowing, all that kind of stuff as well. So we're taking a very wide look at how do you accomplish lasting enterprise automation, not just cover things up with Band-Aids.
Excellent. So reminder to our audience, if you have other questions, be sure to drop those in and we'll do our best to answer those. So Bob, let's get back here to Gen AI and let's, if you would, share other examples about how Gen AI can help our S4 customers.
Well, I mean, the most obvious one that everybody's going to see is Joule. You know, it's going to be it's going to look like a chatbot. It's going to have amazing horsepower to be able to accomplish lots of things. But, you know, in addition to the embedded applications that we're going to be giving you, BTP specifically, which is what all this stuff's being built on, same basic program we did before. We're going to turn over our best tools to help you build customized solutions, whether you're bolting on some third-party solutions to your business process, or if you're writing something brand new with our vector engine in HANA. So we've got amazing technology to help you build something that's custom for your business. A recent example that I saw, are you guys familiar with Louisiana Pacific?
Sure.
Yeah, because you go to Home Depot a lot.
Yep.
you know all those building materials. Yeah, so at Louisiana Pacific, you know, they have the problem of, they basically have 13 manufacturing plants and warehousing facilities that go with those plants. And so orders would come in and to their ERP system, and these orders were, you know, call it 1,000 or 500 or more orders per day. And we're talking about truckloads, semi-trucks of building materials. This is not a tiny little order. They could have thousands of line items. And so their problem was, how do we optimize our delivery of all these big, heavy goods while we optimize the customer's experience as well? So what they decided to do using BTP, because BTP has got all the connectors to take things out of the ERP when needed, they were able to send these orders that were in the ERP through BTP, managing the process, out to a third-party optimizer. And so instead of doing it the old way where they were doing if-then statements, kind of trying to do, you know, optimize it in a very, let's call it rigid kind of way, they now use this modern optimizer to look at all the orders that we have right now and what's the best way we play three-dimensional chess to fulfill these orders in the most efficient way while keeping all our customers happy. And they ran this thing, you know, morning and night. You might think this project took a long time, but no, it did not. We're talking about weeks, not months, to get this thing up and running.
So Bob, Andrew, you know, generative AI, we started how this relates, right? Just to recap for everybody that's following, you know, as an S4 customer with BTP and things like that, what you're getting, first of all, within the core, you're getting AI at the business process level, you know, predict the next delivery delay. That's no problem out of the box. But you're also getting new innovations like Bob mentioned with Joule. And it's a digital assistant, and why it's important you understand the value SAP brings. You may have heard, we talk about reliable business data. It's relevant to your context. We have the world's business data. And of course, it's responsible. So we're not sending data out where you don't want it. And a real differentiator is that we have partnerships with all of these LLM models like Bob mentioned. So we are taking care, when you ask that question to your digital assistant, of which is the most relevant LLM in this business context for your response. And that's very important to understand, both from a value perspective and also a cost perspective, because there's a cost associated each time you go and ask an LLM model something.
Yeah,
so that is something I wanted to highlight there.
Yeah, I would love to throw this out there really quick. So people sometimes don't imagine, you know, what's LLMs good for versus what it's not good for. So let's say you want to answer a simple question like, will Biggie Corp pay its latest invoice on time? Can an LLM answer that question? The answer is no. It can do the human interface really, really well, but it has to understand your business process. It has to be able to check your recent payment history on Biggie Corp to be able to come back. You know, let's say you type that into Joule. It has to understand your data, combine it with the LLM to deliver an answer that says, yes, Big E Corp's got a 98% chance of paying that invoice. So, for example, you order something for your Seattle manufacturing facility. Now you want to know if it's going to deliver on time. Once again, you need current data and an understanding to get that done. Or will Spacely Sprockets renew their maintenance contract? These kind of things, these kind of answers, the prediction, the math end of the world is not what the LLMs are really great at.
So in other words, Bob, what you're saying is, while it's great technology and it's not going to solve everything, right? But it is definitely going to be relevant to solve things where it can make an impact.
Let me give you an example of what it can do that's amazingly cool. Now remember, an LLM has basically swallowed the internet whole. Good way to put it, right? They got trained on the internet, and so it's swallowed GitHub whole. So now, if you want to write you're a coder, and you want to write a new subroutine that does a specific thing, you can ask the LLM to get you started, and you'll be amazed. I mean, that's how BTP end of the world. We're going to be generating lots and lots of code. We're going to help you creating portals. We're going to help you do all these kind of things. It'll help you get your job done much faster. You'll get a sample. They go, oh, that's 90% right. I just got to do a few little adjustments. So it'll do a lot of creation of code to help, and by the way, we're also focused a lot on low-code, no-code. So now you got low-code, no-code tools, which help you go fast. You got Gen AI that helps you go fast. Great examples of ways that Gen AI can help. And it can help in lots of different ways. So for example, you're in HXM and you want to generate new job descriptions based on previous job descriptions from your own company. It's fantastic at doing that. It's also fantastic at summarizing meetings. So let's say we have a transcript of this meeting that we're on right now. You could ask the LLM to summarize this meeting, and they're going to say, Bob talks too much.
So to that point, Bob, we are running close to the end here, but I want to address, there's a couple of questions in the chat from Al-Basha and El-Mehdi, and they're both asking about the role of BTP in Industry 4.0. Either Bob or Feras, help us understand, what is BTP's role in enabling Industry 4.0 for our customers?
Bob, do you want to take that?
I'm not an Industry 4.0 guy, other than I've gone through the really cool thing that we've got at Newtown Square. So if you want to take it, great. And if otherwise, I would defer, or I'd find an Industry 4.0 expert to talk to that.
How about we follow up with some more concrete examples? I know there's a lot and we're running short on time, so I don't want to go off target here.
Right, we'll do that. Then, at a high level, El-Mehdi and Al-Basha, right? BTP is that connective tissue that's going to enable a lot of these Industry 4.0 capabilities. But we'll follow up with you on that. All right, Bob. So let's wrap this up. We've talked about a lot. We've talked about BTP a lot, but let's summarize it for us. What is it that makes BTP different?
I guess I've beat around the bush a little bit about this, but if you had to remember one word only, it's content. Unlike almost any service in the cloud, every service in the cloud gives you capability to do something. It's kind of like a DVD player in the cloud. It lets you play DVDs. BTP actually ships content to go with that. It ships the movie. So for example, you get these, in addition to these 100 technology services that help you assemble these business applications, we give you blueprints that are worked out. So if you want to send your customers a text when the delivery happens, you don't have to start from scratch. You don't take on that risk. We've already had that as a proven blueprint, as an example. We've got lots of blueprints. We also have integration connectors and the mappings between applications, 3,500 plus and growing every single day. And by the way, we maintain those for you, so now it's not technical debt to you anymore. If you want to interface between Salesforce and SAP, sure, we've got that, and we will maintain it so you don't have to. We also, if you do analytics, so you got Analytics Cloud, in Analytics Cloud, we have pre-built dashboards for your industry. And sure, you may want to modify those a little bit to fit exactly what you're trying to do. But once again, you're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. And then I guess one of the cool things we just talked about is bots and how do you automate more. For S4, we are delivering bots every single month to help you with your automation to make your ERP way more efficient. And so, content's the word to remember. The sentence to remember, I think, is that BTP helps you simplify the complexity of your overall landscape, both SAP and non-SAP, so that you can be more adaptable, faster time to value, less risk.
So in other words, Bob, what you're saying here, or if I read this correctly, for customers who may be using existing platforms such as Amazon, among others, one reason why they would definitely go to our platform and BTP is content and acceleration. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, and I don't want to, people sometimes make this mistake. They think it's us or Amazon. No, it's us with Amazon. It's us with Azure. It's us with Google. We snuggle, don't struggle. There's no doubt about it. Okay?
Because we have that business context, right?
Yeah.
No one understands SAP like SAP.
Yeah, it's the right tools for the job. We are delivering the ability for you to create business apps and improve your business processes better than anybody else on earth. And these big infrastructure players are helping you with building another data center, getting more bandwidth, managing containers, getting more CPU if you need it, more storage. All those underlying, very difficult to solve IT things land in those buckets.
Okay. Bob, speaking of content, you are a powerhouse of content, right? You've shared so much with us, but if people want to learn more, where do they go?
You mean we haven't overwhelmed everybody yet?
Not yet. We're getting close, but not yet.
I actually have a cool link I created. It's SAP13, SAP13.com. And what that does is it opens up an emailer. A buddy of mine showed me how to do this. But it sends an email to me, and then I've got an autoresponder that sends you back my 13 favorite links about BTP. And full disclosure, I've got a couple of YouTube videos in there of my own. But it really is a curated list that'll really help you get started with BTP. So send me that email. Connect to me on LinkedIn. I'll answer questions. I'll hook you up to the right people around SAP as well. But I look forward to engaging with everyone, and I hope you find that useful.
Sounds good. Feras, why don't you summarize all of these points for us?
Absolutely. I mean, Feras or Feras, I don't know. I think I need to go by Feras apparently. But hey, today was absolutely a great discussion. And to bring it back all home, right? Customers going into ERP, our flagship product is S4. We have the Grow offering, which has been the focus of this series, which focused on S4HANA Cloud Public Edition. That is where you get the out-of-the-box business processes across finance, procurement, HR. BTP, and by the way, if you didn't know, when you go with the Grow offering, you get free BTP credits to do the things and leverage the things that Bob was talking about, which are different services. It may be integration use cases, automation use cases, the data fabric topic that Bob touched upon, among many others. So there's a lot of different things that BTP does to simplify your business problems, both within SAP and outside of SAP, including the other things that we talked about, integration, among others.
Well said, Feras. A couple other things I want to mention to all of you out there. You're going to see a link for Sapphire. That's coming up in June. We have a really exciting event before the event itself. It's a cloud transformation pre-conference. If you're interested in learning more about S4, BTP, Signavio, LeanIX, consider going to that event. Look for that link in the chat. And also, too, we have a series of BTP events and seminars. We call that BTP Digital Direct. You're going to see a link for that as well. It's going to be a lot of webinars that you can join to learn more about the capabilities of BTP. So with that, we're a wrap. Bob, thanks for joining. This has been a great experience. And again, thank you for sharing all of your stories. Any final words, Bob?
Don't forget about future-proofing. It's so easy for us to get stuck in the weeds or behind the trees of this forest. But all of us have way too many projects that we could work on. Good often gets in the way of great. And so I would suggest every company take a look at the project and say, not only does it help our immediate business results, because there's lots of them we could work on, but does it help us get ready for this real-time data-driven future that includes AI? And if you keep that in mind, I think you'll get the main idea why BTP is there, why it helps you simplify the complexity. It's really about getting ready for the future. It's a topic that I think is crucial because we all have seen all the statistics. The companies in the S&P 500 turn over so quickly. We don't want to be that company. adaptability is the key.
Awesome. Okay, with that, everyone, this is a wrap. Thank you for joining. We will do our best to address any questions in the chat. We will look forward to seeing you again next time. For us, Bob, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you.